the truth about insecurity. Now, you have to understand that insecurity is rooted in a aspect of yourself that you reject. And so what that rejection does, it creates tension in your mind to repulse or to neglect or to overcompensate and, avoid what you reject. But what you have to understand is that insecurity is rooted in the rejection. And so most of you guys reject aspects of yourself that you can change. You're insecure, so you pick up a vape to compensate for the internal rejection of your current state, which is to be addicted. You have to understand that you have a vast power within you, and deep down, you know you have this power. And so when you reject to embrace it, when you reject to actually become and unfold it and to truly use it as a source of strength to empower yourself through life, you subconsciously know this, and this is going to affect the way you behave in reality. And so when you neglect the source of power, there's an aspect of yourself called the shadow that rejects you, because you are rejecting what is going to make you feel whole. And so when you reject yourself, you are now fragmented. You are no longer whole. You're no longer complete. You have an aspect of yourself that you refuse to accept. And so what you have to understand that, if you can change something, but you decide to be insecure, you have to take accountability and responsibility for that pussy in the mirror, because you have the absolute power to grow beyond and excel beyond that limitation. But some people are insecure to things they cannot change. And this is where you have to simply accept and be whole. And you need to embrace that thing. And so what do I mean? If you have a genetic, malfunction, you believe that, maybe the way you look, your facial structure isn't as it should be. You believe that you're imperfect as an individual. Well, you have to truly embrace that, and you have to be whole, and you have to accept and excel beyond that, because you have to understand that you are going to reject that aspect of yourself, and it's going to manifest in your behavior. You're going to be insecure, you're going to avoid, and you're going to overcompensate, and this is going to reflect as malice intention, because you have to understand that the rejection creates an internal structure, and that internal structure is simply the means, aka the avoidance, to avoid being seen. But you are in a state of fear from how you'll be perceived. And so your perception is now weaponized against yourself. So most of you guys exist within your perception, and your perception is just the information you receive internally and externally from the stimuli that occupies your brain. And so what you have to truly comprehend is that when you reject the aspect of yourself, you instantly create an intention to avoid that aspect. And this is going to manifest from a malice intention, because this is not a healthy intention. This is not the intention to grow, a means to an end. The end is growth, and the means is the work you put into grow. No, this is the end to avoid, to not be perceived from that flaw you believe that you possess. And so what you have to do is use your perception as a catalyst for your growth. And so if you lack something, that you cannot change, like for example, your face, well, then you simply channel that tension, you transmute that by embracing the fact that you're never going to look perfect. You embrace that by understanding you're never going to be what you idolize in your mind. But what you can do is work on the things that can be changed. And so you may not have the perfect face, and you may have to go your entire life and existence being imperfect in that area, but that does not mean you cannot level up financially. That does not mean you cannot level up in the gym. It simply means that there's an aspect of yourself that God has deliberately placed for you to overcome, to use as a source of strength, to empower yourself in life. And so most of you guys instantly get insecure because you view your imperfection as something that is flawed. There's something wrong with me. I refuse to accept this. And so this is going to manifest as a shadow tension. And so the shadow trait is going to manifest again as a malice intention to avoid what you view as an imperfection. And this is going to manifest through the way you behave and conduct yourself. And so we have to understand the way that humans operate metaphysically is that we operate from a state of intention. And so if you have the intention, aka the means to the end, if the end is to be comfortable, if the end is to be stable but not the best version of you, well, the means is going to consist of laziness. The means is going to consist of being a pussy. But what you have to understand is that when you have intentions, you have to actually be conscious of them, and then you have to rewire your internal monologue to match what you want to be. And so most of you guys want to be something more than you are, but your intentions is on a continuous cycle navigating you away from what you truly want to be. And so when you have shadow traits, these are negative intentions that navigate you away from the surplusing of life, to grow, catalyze, and boost yourself, empower yourself to become power, a repository of growth, and to become the light and channel that in all endeavors in your life. But most of you guys are infused with these trash shadow intentions that the means and the purpose is now to avoid the truth, which is that you are avoiding that aspect of yourself and then projecting that because you refuse to accept it. And so most of you guys, you have to understand that you're psychologically fucked and you're programmed to navigate yourself away from what you truly desire, which is to be a whole, complete individual. And so what we have to truly do is recite and reflect on who we are. And you have to also understand that when you are occupied by all these shadow intentions, you are now performing. Life is no longer a flow state. Life is no longer something that you are living in congruence with your higher self. Life is no longer this beautiful picture, and it's no longer something you view as something special. Your life is now occupied and incubated and annexed to all these shadow intentions that extract the love and the light of life to navigate yourself into the addiction, into the comfort zone, into the insecurity. And so what you have to truly do as an individual is reflect on your shadow. And most of you guys believe that shadow is simply negative behavior, which at the surface level it is. But when we peer into the depth of your soul and truly see the abyss that fosters in your soul, that because you refuse to shine the flashlight, we have to truly understand that, if you're not going to confront that aspect of yourself, you're going to live as a shadow. And so the beauty within your soul that every single human has, the light that shines, through the darkness of your soul, you're going to hide that. You're going to bury that under all the negative intentions that you allow to occupy your brain and then manifest through your behavior. And every time you navigate yourself back to that, specific behavior, you have to understand that you are fermenting and creating a neurological pathway to navigate you back to that space every time. And so what you have to truly do is reflect on who you are as a person, reflect on what you're becoming as an individual, and then you have to truly question yourself, is this shadow, is this what I really want to do, or is this a means to avoid something, and is this means making me a worse person, decaying me spiritually, mentally, and physically through time? You have to understand that all addictions, all shadow traits is simply a means to the end, and the end is trying to avoid yourself out of what you need to accept and embrace. And you have to understand that if it's something you cannot change, well, you have to simply accept that. There is no other way. God has deliberately placed that in your path for you to grow stronger. And so what you have to understand is that if it's something you cannot change, you accept that. If it's something you change, which is all the means to the end, because the end is avoidance, but the shadow traits also create, these also are creating more shadows because you're engaging in shadow behavior to negate the end, which is avoidance. And so now you have to look at your shadow behavior and realize that you can change this, and it's simply a means to the end, and the end is avoidance of whatever you're insecure about. And so the metaphysics of insecurity is very simple. But the question is, are you strong enough Do you love yourself enough to actually look in the mirror and say, I'm going to decimate and destroy this insecurity, and I'm going to secure myself in all levels that I know that if I'm secure at that level, will I really feel insecure about this? If you had everything you ever wanted, if you actually woke up every day and maximized yourself, maybe you wouldn't feel so insecure about the little thing. But deep down, you know that you're not doing that. And so this little thing becomes very big. Because if this little thing was a little bit better, maybe you wouldn't be so insecure. If you're less in every aspect of life, well, then the aspects that make you feel the most of less, this becomes, the direct reflection of all the lesser traits within yourself. And so that's where the shadow builds. And so are you going to shine the light on yourself, or will you continue to occupy and incubate in the shadow that you exist within? It's very simple. Peace!